Good morning, one and all. A warm welcome to all of you. It's great to have you all here. Myself, Amal C. Babu, student of 5th semester BSc Computer Science, St. Thomas College, Autonomous Thrissur. The legacy of St. Thomas College, an ancient Catholic college in Kerala, can be traced back to 1889, when it was founded as an educational institution from the initiatives of Right Reverend Dr. Adolphus Edwin Medlicott, Monsignor John Palokaran, Mar John Menangeri, Monsignor Joseph Peta, and many like-hearted gentlemen who faded away without even disturbing the historians. Over the years, the college has built up extensive resources that caters to the needs of more than 3,000 students. It has 23 teaching departments. Department of Computer Science had its humble beginning in the year 2001. Little over 2 decades, it has transformed itself into a full-fledged aided research department that creates an innovative academic environment with distinct emphasis on the overall development of students. Besides academic courses and soft skill training, research and innovations are given due importance. Heartfelt welcome to each one of you to the initial session of the international webinar on system thinking and modeling, organized by the Department of Computer Science in association with IQAC, St. Thomas College, Autonomous Thrissur. Being grateful for every moment in this life is the most humble form of belief. Let us all spare a moment in silent prayer. It's my pleasure to extend a cheerful welcome to Dr. Jiju A. Matthew, Head of the Department, to deliver the welcome address.
Respected Principal, Reverend Dr. Martin Columbrath, Resource Person of the Day, Dr. Arun Elias, beloved delegates, teachers, researchers, students, and YouTube viewers. A warm good morning to one and all. It's a moment of extreme pleasure to welcome you all to the two-day international webinar on system thinking and modeling, organized by the Department of Computer Science, St. Thomas College, Thrissur. Conceptually, a system is the product of the interaction of its parts and not just the sum of its parts. It's easier for us to imagine the decomposition of a system into its elementary parts rather than trying to imagine how they work together to become a greater product. We must all try to widen our imagination and try to envision how complex the system actually is using a framework of interrelationship. And I hope at the end of this webinar, we all will be able to have such a holistic perspective towards system thinking. Reverend Dr. Martin Columbrath, principal of our college, is a man of discipline, and with his mesmerizing energy, he amazes us as always. Thank you, Father, for all your kind support. With deep gratitude, we welcome you all to this August gathering. On behalf of the department, I'm profoundly delighted to take this opportunity to welcome the chief guest of the day, Dr. Arun Elias, Associate Professor and Associate Dean, International Accreditation, Wellington School of Business and Government, Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand, who will be sparing his valuable time with us for the two sessions. Welcome, sir. Vice Principals, Dr. Andrew Johnny, Sister Alphonsa Matthew, and Dr. E.D. John, Controller of Examination, Dr. Paulson Matthew, Deans of the colleges, Heads of the departments, IQAC Coordinator, Father Dr. Anil George, I welcome you all to this event. The overwhelming responses what we received from the very date when we publicized the details of this webinar was very heartening. As of today, we have more than 578 registration to this event. On behalf of all out here in St. Thomas College, I welcome all the delegates to this webinar. At last, but not the least, I invite all my dear students and colleagues to the inaugural ceremony. I sincerely hope you all will enjoy these 2 days of dissemination of knowledge, debate, and networking. I conclude my words with an excerpt from Mr. Peter Senge's The Fifth Discipline, the art and practice of the learning organization, that says, quote, Vision without system thinking ends up painting lovely pictures of the future with no deep understanding of the forces that must be mastered to move from here to there. Once again, hearty welcome to all. Thank you.
With immense pleasure and honor, I cordially invite our principal, Father Dr. Martin Colombrath, for the inaugural address.
A warm good morning to one and all. Dr. Arun Elias, the resource person of the day, the vice principals, deans, Dr. Jiju A. Matthew, the HOD and Dean of Planning and Communication, dear faculty members, delegates, scholars, and my dear students. Expand the system and not reduce it to elements. A simple statement that explains system thinking well and clean. It is a process of understanding how things influence one another within a whole. If you take a car apart, it is no longer a car, as it has lost its essential functions. Systems thinking is thus a holistic approach to analysis that focuses on the way how constituent parts of a system interrelate and work over time within the context of larger systems. It's a privilege to have with us Dr. Arun Elias, who has agreed to share his valuable time with us to impart his knowledge on systems thinking. It's a pleasure for our college to host an international webinar that will familiarize such a relevant topic as system thinking to a wider learner community. I congratulate the efforts taken by the staff and students of the Department of Computer Science, especially Dr. Jiju A. Matthew, the HOD, to organize this webinar and expect many more such resourceful events in the future as an initiative of the department. With all your permission, I announce this event officially inaugurated and hope that all the participants find it useful and interesting. Have a nice time ahead. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Father. To start with the opening session of the webinar, I invite Ms. Remila Ravindran, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science, to introduce our resource person, Dr. Arun Elias, Associate Dean with Wellington School of Business and Government, Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand.
Thank you, Amal. Good morning and a warm welcome to all, especially to our respected resource person of the day, Dr. Arun Elias. It is indeed our fortune to have with us Dr. Arun Elias today. Dr. Arun Elias is an Associate Dean of Internationalization and Accreditation with Wellington School of Business and Government, Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. Sir has been associated with the Victoria University of Wellington for the past 22 years. Academically, Sir holds a PhD in Management from Victoria University of Wellington and MTech in Industrial Engineering and Management from IIT Kharagpur and yet another Masters in Agricultural Engineering from Allahabad University. He has worked in industry as an industrial engineer at Tata Iron and Steel Company, in academia as an lecturer with Allahabad University, and also in R&D as agro specialist in sustainable agriculture with UPSI, with many publications in journals and innumerable chapters in renowned journals and books to his credit. So it is an active researcher. His main research interests include system thinking, system dynamics, stakeholder management, operational management, etc. He serves as AASCB mentor and also as a MBA panel member for business schools seeking international accreditations. I'm sure all of you are eagerly waiting to understand more about system thinking and modeling from our expert speaker of the day. Without much delay, let me hand over the platform to Dr. Arun Elias. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Ramla. Thank you for the introduction. Welcome to all the participants. A special thanks to the principal, St. Thomas College Autonomous Thrissur, and also to Professor Jiju Matthew, who invited me to share my thoughts with you. So once again, welcome everybody. Thank you for your interest in listening to me as well as to the field of systems thinking. Let me share my slides. I hope, is that visible, Professor Ramla?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay, thank you. So what I would like to do today is to talk about three things about systems thinking. Before I introduce systems thinking, I want to talk about complex problems. Some problems are complex. Then I want to introduce the concept of systems thinking, and then I want to again go on with systems approaches, and then focusing on systems thinking and modeling. These are the three things which I want to cover in the first webinar. As you know, there are two webinars. This is more conceptual. I basically would like to answer the question, what is systems thinking? Whereas in the second seminar, which is day after tomorrow on Friday, I'll try to talk about how systems thinking, how can we apply some of these systems thinking principles, systems thinking frameworks, systems thinking and modeling to the real world. So complex problems, systems thinking and systems approaches. I've been teaching for so many years, more than 25, 30 years, and one thing I learned was only focus on three things. Anything more than three, it will go over the top. So let me try to focus on those three things. The first thing is complex problem. As I said, some problems are complex. Let's take about COVID-19. COVID-19 is a complex problem. All of us know that. Why? Because there are a number of parts involved. COVID-19 is not just a medical problem. It is also a health problem. It is also a societal problem. It is also a, economic problem. So in complex problems, there are a number of factors. If you ask why is it a problem, there are so many factors associated with it. Now, that's not the only thing. They are interacting. The factors are interacting, So there are a number of interacting factors, and many a times they are mutually dependent. These factors depend on each other. So complex problems, there are a number of aspects or parts involved which are all interconnected and mutually dependent. Some problems are complex. COVID-19 is an example. Now, some complex problems are counterintuitive. Now, what is the word? What does it mean? Counterintuitive. Counterintuitive means exactly opposite to what you thought would happen. You thought, after doing a fantastic job, Kerala, during the last 6 months, starting from maybe January 2020, we thought we'll wipe out COVID, but COVID has increased exponentially. Exactly opposite to your intuition, counterintuitive behavior. What's a counterintuitive behavior? People seeking to solve a problem often make it worse. Our policies may create unanticipated side effects. We thought this would happen, but exactly something else happened. There were some side effects which we didn't expect. Our attempts to stabilize the system may destabilize it. We went to stabilize the system, but what happened? It got destabilized. Now, Jay Forrester is was a professor in MIT. MIT is Massachusetts Institute of Technology. MIT is one of the top universities in the world. Jay calls it counterintuitive behavior. Now, Professor Jiju quoted Peter Senge. Peter Senge was one of Jay Forrester's PhD students. So Jay calls it counterintuitive behavior. Jay passed away year before last. He is no more. Currently, the professor in MIT in the systems thinking, system dynamics area is John Sterman. John calls counterintuitive behavior something like this. The system will try to delay it, dilute it, or defeat it, making it a counterintuitive behavior. I repeat what I said. The system will try to delay it, dilute it, or defeat it, making it counterintuitive. So the 2 points I started with are these. Some problems are complex, number one. Number two, some complex problems are counterintuitive. It happens exactly opposite to what you thought will happen. Let me try to explain this counterintuitive using a small case, counterintuitive behavior. Now, I'm sure you have heard about Romania. It's unfortunate I cannot interact with you, but if you think about, if I ask you a question, what is Romania famous for? I don't know what you will answer. Romania is famous for, if you take sports, Romania is famous for gymnastics. I don't know whether you remember the name of Nadia Comaneci. Nadia was a Romanian gymnast. So Romania used to get a lot of gold medals or medals in the Olympics on gymnast. Romania is famous for soccer. Romania is famous for Transylvanian palaces. If you read the book Dracula, Bram Stoker was an Irishman, but the Dracula story is set in Romanian, castles and so on and so forth. It's a fascinating place. It's an Eastern European country, but it is not a very rich country. Now, the story which I want to tell about Romania is about a political story. The story of a dictator known as Nicolae Ceausescu. Nicolae Ceausescu. So what is the story? Crude birth rate. Crude birth rate means births per year per 1,000 people were very low in the late 60s in Romania. So Nicolae Ceausescu, the dictator, thought, this is a grave national pride problem. At that time, the crude birth rate was just 15 per 1,000. Nicolae thought, this is very low. We need to, this is not good for my nation. So what did he do? He imposed some policies to stimulate birth rate. What did he do? He outlawed contraceptives, propaganda campaigns for large family. And he said it's a matriotic duty to have more children. And if you have a big family, tax incentives were given. Abortion was banned in October 1966. So to address a problem which he thought is very important, he brought in so many policy initiatives. What happened? Immediate and dramatic results. Birth rate rose sharply, nearly 40 per 1,000 per year. So if you draw a graph, it went from 15 to 40. Oh, what a success. Policy appeared to be a sensational success. But what happened? Within months, birth rate began to fall. By 1970, in just 4 years, it became 20. So if you draw a graph, from 15, it went to 40. From 40, it came to 20. And by 1989, it was just 16. That's where we started, isn't it? We started at 15, now we are back in 16. So almost the same low rate that led to the implementation of the policy. What happened? What happened, friends? What happened here? Now, what happened? The system, I repeat, the system responded in ways regime did not anticipate. Nicolae didn't think this would happen. People of Romania found ways around the policy. They practiced alternative methods of birth control, smuggled contraceptive devices from other countries, and desperate women went for back-alley abortions. That's very sad, unsanitary abortion. And what happened? It led to near tripling of deaths due to abortion. And horribly, neonatal deaths rose by more than 300% in 66-67. 20% increase in infant mortality rate, and policy was rendered ineffective as soon as it was implemented. Now, the story doesn't stop here. Unanticipated consequences did not stop there. People of Romania. Now, Romania is an Eastern European country, and Eastern European countries, not all Eastern European countries are rich. Actually, people of Romania is a poor country. Now, they had small families because they couldn't afford large families. They had extended families, state-run orphanages, etc. Now, government policy didn't prevent them from controlling their own fertility. But what it did was intense anger against Nicolae Ceausescu and his wife. His wife was also very powerful. Now, you know the story. In 1899, in Germany, the Berlin Wall fell. Eastern European regimes toppled. Now, if you think about Velvet Revolution was generally not a violent revolution. Except Romania. In Romania, it became very violent. Nicolae Ceausescu and his equally hated wife was executed by the firing squad, killed by the firing squad. That's not it. Their bloody bodies were left in the presidential palace, and the whole thing was broadcast on national TV. Even today, this is available on YouTube, So by mid-1990s, Romanian population was actually declining. Birth dropped below deaths. Think about it. Counterintuitive behavior. Professor John Sterman said, the system will try to delay it, dilute it, or defeat it. Now, I would argue that Nicolae Ceausescu had a good intention. He thought it was a national pride thing. But the counterintuitive behavior was so harsh that he even lost his life. Counterintuitive behavior, exactly opposite to what you think would happen. So, what I am trying to say, some problems are complex, some problems are counterintuitive. Romanian example is a classic case of counterintuitive behavior. Now, you can capture counterintuitive behavior using a systems thinking tool known as behavior over time, BOT graph. What is a BOT graph? A BOT graph is a simple tool in systems thinking. It's a very, very simple tool. It's also known as reference mode. What it does, it captures the main variables in the system. It uses the main variables in the system, and it shows how these variables have behaved over a period of time. Has it increased? Has it decreased? Has it oscillated? And usually it is drawn not on an exact value, it is drawn on a rough sense. I mean the trend. So behavior over time graph is a systems thinking tool which can capture counterintuitive behavior. It's a very, very simple tool. Let me show you some examples of BOT graphs. Now, here is an example. This is a small company, The company produces some electronic products. Look at that. The total market is going up between 2005 and 2020. 15 years data, if you take, the total market, the demand for their product is going up. The efficiency of their production is going up. Their price is coming down. Now you think about it. There is more demand. They have total market is going up. They are doing very efficient production. Their price is coming down. If all those things, what should happen to their market share? Market share should actually go up. But what is happening in market share? Market share is coming down. Counterintuitive behavior. You would have thought market share would go up if their total market is high, efficiency is high, and price is low. But actually market share is coming down. That's complicated. That's complex. That's counterintuitive. Let me show you some examples of my research which we did to give you more example of complex counterintuitive problems. Now, I'm originally from Kerala. I'm from Kottayam. So I in when I had a sabbatical leave in 2010, I came back to Kerala for an year. I was based in IIM Kozhikode. So I did some research between India and New Zealand. So the New Zealand High Commissioner, specifically the New Zealand Trade Commissioner, was worried that not much IT, information technology trade happens between New Zealand and India. He was saying, India is a champion in IT outsourcing, and New Zealand, it's only 5 million population. So therefore, we need, the human resource capital is low. So we need more outsourcing, but not much happening between India and New Zealand. Both are Commonwealth countries. Cricket is a common denominator. English is the language. But compared to other countries, not much happening. So I did some research with my friend Saji Matthew in IIT Madras. This is something we published. But in the publication, I just want to focus on the counterintuitive behavior. This work we published in 2014. So if you take a data from 2006 to 2013, even now the data has not changed dramatically. Number one, that first part of the graph, total IT export from India is increasing. You all know that. India is a champion of information technology outsourcing. This outsourcing is going up. Now in New Zealand, total IT imports to New Zealand is increasing. Number two, the imports to New Zealand is increasing. You think about it. Exports from India is increasing. Imports to New Zealand is increasing. Then you would have thought, given the relationship between New Zealand and India as two Commonwealth nations, the IT exports from India to New Zealand should increase. But unfortunately not. It is going down. That's counterintuitive. That's complex. There is something else happening there. Or there are so many things happening there. You see, that's an example of a counterintuitive behavior. One more. Now, we have a road here. We have been planning a road. It's a motorway between Wellington and Auckland. Now, New Zealand, you might know there are two main islands, North Island and South Island. North Island, the main or the biggest city is Auckland. Now, I live in Wellington. Wellington is also in North Island, but at the bottom of the North Island. This is on the top of the North Island, Auckland. Wellington is on the bottom of the North Island. So we have been planning a new highway, a new motorway from Wellington to Auckland. This is known as Transmission Gully. Now, what it shows, what our traffic pattern, traffic data shows is this. Number one, traffic volume is going up. Traffic volume means traffic congestion. The traffic congestion is going up. And I'm sure this is the story in Kerala too, or Thrissur too. The travel time is going up. You would have thought earlier it used to take, I don't know, if I travel from Thrissur to Kottayam, it would be about 3 hours or 4 hours drive. Now it is taking 4.5 or 5. Air pollution is also going up. It's becoming more and more polluted. Now you think about this situation. It is traffic volume is going up. That means traffic congestion is going up. It is taking more time to travel. Travel time is going up. It is becoming more polluted. If that is the case, a qualitative variable known as attractiveness of driving. Attractiveness of driving should decrease. But no. In New Zealand, attractiveness of driving is increasing. There are so many other factors. That's counterintuitive. That's complex. People are having more and more cars. There are more cars on the road. It's more attractive to drive. That's counterintuitive. Two more. Wellington, where I live, is the capital city. That's our New Zealand Parliament. We call it Beehive. It is built in the shape of a beehive, Teni Chakuda. So Beehive. So Beehive have been introducing this quality control, quality improvement mechanisms in New Zealand in its public sector. So one of the quality improvement mechanism is known as Lean Six Sigma. So many of the New Zealand public sector, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Tax, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Business, all these people have been introducing Lean Six Sigma in the organization. So what is happening in this public sector organization when they introduce Lean Six Sigma? The training hours have been going up. More and more people are getting trained in Lean Six Sigma. The benefits realized using Lean Six Sigma have been going up. Things are becoming more efficient. It's very lean, less people required, better output, so on and so forth. If training hours are going up and benefits realized are going up, you would have expected number of Lean Six Sigma projects is also going up. But no. Number of Lean Six Sigma projects went up for some time. Now it's coming down. Counterintuitive behavior. One last one. Now, last year, I took my students. I was lucky enough to get a Prime Minister scholarship. So our Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, she offered scholarship for high-performing projects. And we were lucky to get a good scholarship to take 10 of our students to Amazon. So this is Amazon forest. So I take 10 of my students along with another lecturer. We went to Brazil, and then from Brazil we went to Amazon. We took a speedboat, about 2 hours. The river you see is known as River Negro or the Black River. So we went inside the Amazon and stayed in Amazon for a few weeks. Now, an interesting story about Amazon is this. Deforestation between 1995 and 2020 in Amazon is going up. But the Brazilian government is also making a lot of protected areas. Protected areas means you cannot go in, or only the local people can go in there. Okay. So we actually stayed in a very small village in the Amazon, inside the Amazon forest known as Tumbira. And there are a lot of non-governmental organizations, NGOs. They are putting a lot of pressure for, let's avoid deforestation. Let's, put in more sustainable forestry. But unfortunately, after all these things, after protected areas and NGO pressure and worldwide problems with deforestation, the sustainable forestry adoption in the Amazon is very low. The last thick line. It is going up at a very, very, very slow rate. You would have thought with all these protected areas and NGOs working there, it would go up. No, it is not going up. So this is also counterintuitive. What am I trying to say? Some problems are complex and some problems are counterintuitive. I gave you quite a few examples. You can think about examples in Kerala, in Thrissur, in India. I talked about Romania. I'm sure you can think about a similar example in India. It may not be to increase, the birth rate, maybe to decrease birth rate. There is a classic example in India. So complex counterintuitive problems. And what I would like to say now is that systems thinking is an useful approach for addressing these sort of complex problems. John Sterman has a book called Business Dynamic. This is known as systems thinking for understanding change and complexity. Complex problems are very good candidates to use or to apply systems thinking. So the first part of my class was to introduce to complex counterintuitive problems. I also gave you an example. If it were a pure class, I would have asked you to now draw a BOT graph to identify a counterintuitive problem and draw a BOT graph. When you have time, you can do it. My second part of the lecture, systems thinking. So I have established that complex counterintuitive problems, systems thinking is a useful way of approaching it. What is a system? A system is a complex of interrelated parts. Now have a look at it. There are parts. But more important in that sentence is the word before that, interrelationship. The parts are interconnected, interrelationship. What's the problem? We usually focus on the parts, not on the interrelationship. Now, if I ask my Kiwi students, I teach in a business school here in Wellington, New Zealand. If I ask what is a system, they'll immediately say information systems. Now, information system is only one type of system. A group of people, human resource system, different system. A system is a complex of interrelated parts. Now, what is a philosophy of systems thinking? Let me try to explain the philosophy of systems thinking. Now, sorry, I'm using so many New Zealand examples. Now, New Zealand is a very beautiful place. What I'm showing you is a small church in the South Island of New Zealand. So we get a lot of tourists, not during COVID, but before COVID. New Zealand was a tourist destination, and especially South Island is very sparsely populated, and it's a beautiful country. And you get scenes like this. And this is a church in front of in the South Island of New Zealand. Now, in front of that church, it is written like this: tackle the hard task piece by piece. What does that mean? You have a big problem. You break it down into small pieces and solve it. You do it, I do it. We have a big problem. We can't handle the whole thing. So we break it down into small chunks, small pieces and solve it. Tackle the hard task piece by piece. This is in front of an old church in the South Island of New Zealand. What do we say in systems thinking? Please don't do that. Try systems approach. Exactly opposite to tackling the hard task piece by. What am I trying to say? That concept is known as reductionism. Reducing things, cutting things into small pieces and solving it. Now, reductionism is what we have been doing all these years. For example, in physics, we have done reductionism. They say Newtonian physics is very reductionist. We have done it in economics. In economics, econometric principles are very reductionist, they say. We have done it in politics, haven't we? Politics. Divide and rule, divide and conquer, reductionism. But what I'm trying to say today is that reductionism has served us for so many years, but reductionism also has its problems. It may not solve the whole problem, or there are so many other issues associated with reductionism. Now, reductionist thinking is just opposite to systems thinking. What is systems thinking? It's seeing the big picture. Seeing the whole. That's one question you need to ask. Do you see the whole? You say we have a very complex problem. You say we have a very complicated problem. It could be an engineering problem. It could be a management problem. It could be a societal problem. Do you see the whole? Do you see the big picture? Do you see the forest, or you just see the trees? Do you see the whole? The other part is systems thinking is about long-term thinking. It is not about short-term thinking. Systems thinking is about long-term thinking. No, so it is not about what an organization should do in 2 days' time. It's about the long-term future. In 5 years down the track, where should St. Thomas College Thrissur be? Rather than how should I solve my staff shortage in 2 months' time? It's a long-term direction. Therefore, systems thinking is very strategic thinking. Strategy, the term strategy is long-term. The other thing is linear thinking and systems thinking are two different things. Linear thinking believes that factors are independent. You identify, for example, if I ask you the question, why St. Thomas College is a very good college in Kerala, you might say, oh, we have very good history. We have very good staff. We have very good location. We have fantastic alumni. We have one of your alumni in New Zealand who always talks very high about St. Thomas College Thrissur. That's how I came to know about the quality of St. Thomas College. So, but in linear thinking, all these factors are independent. The staff, the location, the history. But in systems thinking, they are all connected. Staff is connected to history, is connected to location, So in linear thinking, factors are independent. Systems thinking, factors are interdependent. The second thing is that in linear thinking, they believe that cause to effect, causality, cause and effect is only one way. So there is a cause and there is an effect. There is traffic and you build new roads. There is headache and you use Panadol. Cause and effect. But what we are saying in systems thinking, no. Causality not just runs in one way. There is two-way causality or three-way causality. The idea of feedback. Feedback is a very important concept in systems thinking. There is feedback. The third difference between linear and systems thinking is that in linear thinking, we believe that factors are equally important. There are 5 factors. All factors are equal to 1, like that. But in systems thinking, we say there is a hierarchy of factors. Some factors, maybe history, is more important than the staff, which may be more important than location. You see what I'm trying to say? So linear thinking is what you usually find in the world. Systems thinking is more holistic thinking. Now, what is a system? If somebody asks you today, you went for a class on systems thinking, some professor from New Zealand was teaching about systems thinking, did you understand anything? So you can say this is a system. The simple picture, the simple diagram of a system is this: input, process, output. Input goes in, processes happen, outputs come out. If I had a chance to interact, I would have now asked you to draw for our class today what were the inputs, what were the process, and what were the output. You may think it's a very simple question, but mostly my experience in different parts of the world has got that this you get it wrong. I know the inputs are mainly you coming in, the participants. The process may be learning. The process may be, teaching. But I will be interested to know what is the output. The only thing I will say is this: what goes in should come out. That's a simple law of thermodynamics. Matter can neither be created nor be destroyed. When you draw an input, process, output diagram, make sure that what goes in should come out. If participant went in, participant should come out. Okay. I was teaching here in a management class, and I asked the student, can you apply this simple input, process, output to one of the organization? So one Kiwi girl applied it to a hospital. So she said inputs, patients. I said, great, patients go in. Process, healing patients. Fantastic. I thought process is fine. And then she said outputs, doctors. Now that simply cannot happen. Okay. You cannot have patients going in and doctors coming out. That's not possible. If patients goes in, patient has to come out. We'll talk about it later in more detail. So what am I trying to say? The simple depiction of a system. There may be feedback here, but I'm not going into those details. What is a system? Input, process, output. Inputs into a system get transformed into outputs. The transformation process is a systems thinking idea. Now, features of systems. The 3 common features of system are feedback, complexity, and emergent property. Let me talk about 2 of them: feedback and negative feedback. Now, in systems thinking, there are 2 types of feedback. There are only 2 types of feedback: positive feedback, negative feedback. Positive feedback is known as reinforcing feedback. A and B, 2 variables. A increases B, B increases A. I repeat what I said. A and B, 2 variables. A increases, B increases. B increases, A increases. Let me give you a simple example. A is births, B is population. Births increases, population increases. A increases, B increases. Birth increases, population increases. Now population increases, birth increases. So that's a reinforcing feedback loop. A increases, B increases, B increases, A increases. Reinforcing feedback. The other feedback is negative feedback, balancing feedback. A increases, B increases. But when B increases, A decreases. A increases, B increases. But when B increases, A decreases. Let me give you an example. Population and death. More population increases, deaths also increases in a city. When there is more population in a city, deaths increase. But when deaths increase, population decreases. More population, more deaths. More deaths, less population. That's a negative feedback. So there are two types of feedback in systems thinking: positive feedback and negative feedback. Positive feedback is reinforcing feedback. Negative feedback is balancing feedback. The other feature of systems thinking is the most beautiful concept in systems thinking: emergent property. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. What does that mean? I said system consists of parts, but emergent property says when parts combine, parts doesn't have a property. The individual parts doesn't have that property. But then parts combine, there is a new property. Let me give you a few examples. A simple example is water. Now, water has two parts, hydrogen and oxygen. You cannot drink hydrogen. Hydrogen doesn't have a property of drinking. Oxygen, you cannot drink oxygen. But when they combined, hydrogen and oxygen combine, there is an emergent property. There is a new property. If my English is right, drinkability. Drinkability is the property. This property is not there for hydrogen, nor there for oxygen. But when they combine, there is this new property. Your principal father said this example, I think. A car, an automobile. You break it down into different parts. Those parts doesn't have the ability to move. The mobility as a emergent property happens when all the parts of the car is assembled. A human body, the nose cannot think on its own. The eyes cannot think on its own. Even the brain cannot think on its own. You know that. If the brain is separate, it cannot think. But everything together, human body has the ability to think. In a football team, you have to combine as a football team to score a goal. I don't know whether you saw the match between Germany and France today. France won by 1-0. Actually, it was a self-goal. The ability to score a goal is usually an emergent property. Individually, it may be difficult to do. The whole is greater than the sum of its part. But there is one point which is important. Generally, emergent property is a good thing. When you have emergent property, you can score a goal, you can solve a puzzle, you can have a team effort, and so on and so forth. But sometimes emergent property can be the less than the sum of its parts. Let me give you an example. I have two children, Ananya and Alap. Now they are grown up, they are teenagers. But when both my children were young, it was my duty to drive the car and take them to school. So you think about the situation. The father is driving the car. The two young guys are sitting at the back. And what would happen? There is a fight. There is a fight between Ananya and Alap. Ananya is the elder and Alap is the younger. So Alap has a tendency, as a young boy, he wants to say big things about himself. So he starts, do you know, Ananya, I am very good in maths. I get 100%, 99%, 98%. My maths teacher says, you're the best maths student in my class, Alap. Ananya, sometimes you fail in maths, don't you? Ananya is very silent. This encourages Alap to say more things about himself. He continues. Do you know, Ananya, I am very good in cricket. I'm a fantastic bowler. I'm an excellent fielder. I can bat very well. When Sachin Tendulkar came to Wellington, he said, hi, Alap. That never happened, actually. You don't even know how to play cricket. Do you know, Ananya? Ananya is silent. This encourages Alap to say more things about himself. He says, Ananya, Appa and Amma, Mom and Dad loves me more than you. Do you know that? At this point, Ananya talks. Ananya says, yes, Alap, you're very good in maths, you're very good in cricket, you're very good in this, you're very good in that, but altogether, you are an idiot. Do you know that? That is an emergent property. That's an emergent property. The whole can also be sometimes less than the sum of its parts. Now, in systems thinking, there are a lot, as any new subject, there are a lot of new languages: interrelationship, boundary, holism, feedback, causality, dynamics, emergent property, control of a system. I'll go through this in detail later, but what I want to focus is the idea of feedback and emergent property. As I said, there are two types of feedback: positive feedback and negative feedback. And the idea of emergent property, the whole is greater than the sum of its part. But remember, the fundamental concept of systems thinking is interconnections, interrelationship. Now, my third part, I realize that I have only 5 minutes left. So let me quickly go through the systems approach. The main point I want to say in systems approach, there are 4 types of systems approach. Systems thinking is a world. There are master's course in systems thinking. Many MBA, many engineering courses in IIT Kharagpur, for example, there are systems dynamics courses. But there is master's program. University of Hull in the UK offers a master's in systems thinking. So how systems approaches are classified in the systems thinking literature are into hard, soft, critical, and multi-methodology. Now, what is hard systems approach? Hard systems approach believes that there is an objective reality. The reality is very clear, something like an engineering problem. It's very clear. The champions are again the MIT people, Jay Forrester and John Sterman. Jay is no more. John is the current professor. Now, Jay developed this field known as system dynamics in the MIT, in the Sloan School of Management. It started with one of his articles in Industrial Dynamics or in the Harvard Business Review. He used computer simulation, control theory. Control theory, that's where that feedback is coming, positive feedback and negative feedback. Now, originally it was more, supply chain management. Jay actually started the whole field, I would argue, because the idea of bullwhip effect came from Jay. Now, when Jay was doing this work, the mayor of New York came to him and said, hey, I have other problems, social problems, for example, housing problems for working class. Can you solve this using your new methodology? And Jay tried it on these social problems. That is when, this field, the industrial dynamics became system dynamics. It can be applied to any type of problems. Lot of works, Meadows and Meadows. It's a very environmental management famous book. Jeff Coyle in the UK has been doing a lot of work in that. Business Dynamics by John Sterman is a book. There's a System Dynamics Society. There is a System Dynamics Review, a sort of a journal. My background is I was a student of IIT Kharagpur, like Professor Jiju said, and there was a course on system dynamics, and I got very, very interested into that particular course. I even did 2 theses while I was doing my master's, and one of them was on system dynamics. And one of the professors from Victoria University of Wellington happened to come to IIT Kharagpur when I was there, and he offered me a scholarship to do a PhD in Victoria University of Wellington, and that's why I happened to be in New Zealand. That subject brought me to this country. 22 years I have been here. My children were born here. So system dynamics is a methodology to address complex problems. So it's a methodology. Now, soft systems methodology and critical systems methodology are slightly different from hard. Soft systems methodology believes that, problems are not very clear. Systems thinking, critical thinking believes that you have to take a step back, critically evaluate. And John Brocklesby from our university, Peter Checkland is from University of Lancaster. Werner Ulrich, the critical system person, is from University of Lugano in Switzerland. And John is from our university. What John does is he mixes hard and soft, mixes soft and critical when the problems are very complex. Softer system, Peter Checkland, is where the problems are ambiguous. You can't use numbers. Critical systems is when you critically evaluate the systems. These are different systems approaches. Now, based on all these approaches, in Victoria, we have developed this thing known as systems thinking and modeling, which is called 5 phases. Problem structuring and causal loop modeling. That are the first 2 phases, where we structure the problem. We make a qualitative model. Once we do that, the 3 other phases are computer based. We put that causal model, the systems model, into the computer. Number 3, dynamic model. We make a simulation model. And then we try different experience, different scenarios, different scenario planning, different experience, phase 4. And through that, we learn about the system. So the systems thinking and modeling is a framework which we developed in Victoria, which is based on system dynamics, but not purely on system dynamics. It also uses the softer elements of systems thinking, what I talked about, Peter Checklin, soft systems methodology. It has 5 phases: problem structuring, causal loop modeling, dynamic modeling, scenario planning and modeling, and implementation and organization learning. In the next lecture, next week, day after tomorrow, I will talk more about this. I'll explain it, and using examples, I will try to evaluate it. Okay. My final slide. At the end of the day, what is systems thinking? It's an interdisciplinary approach. It is not just engineering. It is not just management. It is not just science. It's an interdisciplinary approach. It is a methodology to solve complex problems. And at the end of the day, it's a way of thinking. Do you see the whole holistic thinking? Just to summarize what I did today, I know that towards the end, I went a bit fast because I want to respect the time. I started by saying, number 1, some problems are complex and some complex problems are counterintuitive. Counterintuitive problems. I gave examples for counterintuitive problems. Number 2, I said systems thinking is a useful way to approach counterintuitive problems, complex counterintuitive problems. Systems thinking is about seeing the whole. Systems thinking is about appreciating that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. There are 2 types of feedback: negative feedback, positive feedback, and negative feedback. Number 3, systems approach. There are different types of systems approach. Hard approach, the MIT, the system dynamics approach. Soft approach, more British, more soft systems approach. Things are not clear. The problem is not clear. Critical approach, where we take a step back and critically evaluate the system. And multi-methodology, where we mix soft and critical. We mix hard and soft. We mix critical and hard, so on and so forth. That was my first talk. Thank you very much for listening. And I would like to give this opportunity to ask any questions you have. Over to Professor Ramala.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this wonderful talk. So we have a question here from Kartika. Are creative thinking and system thinking related?
Yeah. The whole idea of innovation, the whole idea of innovation, creative thinking is related to systems thinking. I mean, systems thinking believes that things change over time. So it is not that it is always at a constant point of time. Things change. So many of the complex problems, to address complex problem, you have to be creative. You have to understand the whole systemic thinking. But in that systems thinking, you have to be creative. So the answer is definitely yes. In terms of research, Kartika, there are a lot of systems thinkers now who integrates innovation, the field of innovation, and systems thinking. So there is literature, a new form of new stream of literature, which is about innovation, connecting innovation and systems thinking.
Thank you, sir. We have yet another question, not from the set. How system thinking is related to project management?
Yeah.
And how can a student, basically our audience mainly belongs to our students, like they belong to the Department of Computer Science. So how can a student approach projects in this domain?
Yeah. So actually, if you look at it, the counterintuitive behavior examples I gave were all projects. Only difference were they were long-term projects. What's a project? Project is they have a definitive start point and end point. and they are different. They are unique. These are the two main characteristics of a project, isn't it? They have a definite start and a definite end, and they are unique. Now, I showed about Lean Six Sigma. That was a project. Then I showed about a roadway, motorway. Motorway is a project. So all these things, in fact, most of the examples I showed you was project, and I work in project management. So yes, in project management, you really need a systems approach. You need to see the whole. Otherwise, project management becomes very narrow. One of the problems with project management, we have a PhD student here who actually works on projectification. Sometimes it becomes too projectified. Project has to be broad. In fact, in System Dynamics Review, which I said, which is the Journal of System Dynamics Society, one whole issue was dedicated to project management. So the answer is yes, it is very much connected. And I'll talk more about project management in the next lecture.
Thank you, sir. So yet another question is, how can we reverse feed from system thinking?
Reverse feed.
Yes.
Okay. So the feedback, which I said, there are positive and negative feedback. So, you can always go in the other direction too. So systems thinking is looking at the whole, which includes forward as well as backward. So in a holistic thinking, reverse feed is definitely a part of it, in my opinion. I can give you one example. In logistics, in supply chain management, there is a field known as reverse logistics. So in supply chain management, it is usually from supplier to the customer's customer. So you take a product from its origin and give it to the customer. Reverse logistics is coming back from the customer back to some parts of the supply chain. It could be back to the manufacturer. It could be back to some production. It could be back to wholesaler. There are researchers which has used systems thinking approach to understand reverse logistics.
Thank you, sir. Yet one more last question round here. How is system thinking and AI connected?
I'm not sure there is a lot of AI connection with systems thinking. The fundamental idea of systems thinking, as I said, it is an interdisciplinary approach. I mean, artificial intelligence have not. So it's a thinking. It's a way of looking at a complex problem. So as far as I know, I may be wrong. I am also a student of systems thinking. I have not heard many applications of artificial intelligence in systems thinking. The concept of systems thinking is more broader. It is an interdisciplinary approach. As I said, it's a methodology to solve complex problems. It could be a computer science problem. It could be an engineering problem. It could be a project management problem. And it is a way of thinking. Do you see the whole? So as far as I know, the connection between AI and, I mean, in the broader schema of things, you can argue, but I have not seen much connections. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was a very informative session. We could know about the basics of water system modeling. So we have one more question here. Sir, should the immediate consequences be ignored for greater good?
That's a fantastic question. Yeah. I'll try to explain them, systems archetypes. One is known as fixes that fail. Generally, we go for immediate quick fixes. What systems thinking says is that if you keep on doing it, it will be difficult to come out. So the general human tendency is to go for that immediate consequence, but the problem, when you have a headache, you take Panadol. Okay. The Panadol might reduce your headache for the short term. So you can solve the immediate consequence. But in the long term, Panadol may become a problem for you. There are unintended consequences which will actually increase the problem symptom. You may have bigger problem. That's a crux of system thinking, should immediate consequences. My thing is that what is important is greater good. I'm not saying that you should ignore immediate consequences, but if you become an addict to solving just the immediate consequences, then there is a problem. And that's what systems thinking, many models in systems thinking has proved. Thank you.
It was great interacting with you. I'm sure that students are waiting for the next session, which is scheduled for Friday, to know more about system thinking, to know what is a project domain, and to see the live examples. So thank you so much, sir. It was a very, very informative session. Right from the basics, you have given us an insight what is the basics of system thinking to its application side. Thank you so much, sir.
Most welcome. Thank you.
I hope over to you, Amal. Thank you.
Hope all you have filled the feedback form provided in the chat box. I now invite Viaros Davis of the third semester BSc Computer Science for the vote of thanks.
Good morning, everyone. It is a privilege to propose the vote of thanks for this great interactive conference on systems thinking and modeling conducted by Department of Computer Science of St. Thomas College. First, I express my gratitude to the Almighty for His abundant blessings on each of us. Now, I thank our principal, Reverend Dr. Father Martin K.A., for his consent and valuable presence for this entire webinar. Thank you, Father. I also thank Dr. Jiju A. Matthew, head of the department and program coordinator, for his immense support throughout the program. Let me express my heartfelt gratitude to our resource person, Dr. Arun Elias. Sir, it was undoubtedly an enriching session that helped us learn more about in the field of systems thinking. Once again, thank you, sir. I also express my gratitude to Mrs. Ramila Ravindran, Assistant Professor in St. Thomas College, for introducing us to our speaker. I also thank all the faculties and students for all their support and efforts which made this program as a great success. Last but not the least, I thank all the participants for showing their active participation. We will meet each other soon on 18th of June, Friday at 10 a.m. for the final session of second day international webinar. Until then, it's Viaros Davis signing off. Thank you and have a great day.